Welcome to another episode of A Fistful of Lenses. In this episode, we'll take a closer look at the Carl Zeiss Jena Flektogon 35mm f2.4 lens. It's a lens that has quite a following amongst vintage lens aficionados and tends to command a higher price than the Tess has, for instance. So is it worth the extra cost? Or is it another vintage lens hype job? I'll be interested to find out. For this review, I'll be using the Sony A7R Mark III and the Fuji X-T1, and I'll be using the lens to shoot video and stills, which will be shown straight out of camera without any editing or colour grading. So you can see how the lens performs in its rawest form, in real world conditions, with its character, strengths, and any weaknesses undisguised. For the technically minded of you out there, the lens optical construction is 6 elements in 6 groups. It has 6 aperture blades and a close focus of less than 20 centimeters. The lens weighs in at 246 grams. And like many of the Carl Zeiss Jena lenses of the time, it accepts 49mm filters. The lens came to market in 1976. So what was the world like in 1976? Well, let's take a trip together down memory lane. In 1976, the group ABBA have 3 number 1 singles in the UK charts. In Formula 1, James Hunt wins the World Grand Prix by a margin of just 1 point over arch rival Niki Lauda. And in industry, Robert L. Ornstein patented his 43mm industrial glue gun. Speaking of glue, the other day I was out for a romantic meal with a wife when she turned to me and asked me to pass her lipstick. I passed her a glue stick. She's still not speaking to me. Anyway, that was the world in 1976. So let's get out there in the real world and put this old classic lens through its paces. So as we view images taken with the lens, let's learn a little about the Flektogon and its retrofocus lens design. Retrofocus lenses were a game changer when invented, allowing wide-angle lenses to be made for SLR cameras, something that simply didn't exist before 1949. Retrofocus lenses were invented by 2 rival companies independently at around the same time. In the West, by Pierre Angenois, apologies for my pronunciation, and behind what was then the Iron Curtain in East, from the designers at Carl Zeiss Jena. Both were applying for patents for 35mm lenses in 1950. This particular Flektogon is a later design that built on the lessons learned from earlier attempts. This particular lens has good sharpness at f8, with very pleasing bokeh that can make for some dreamy looking images. It has that beautiful Zeiss Jena colour palette, with that beautiful balance the Zeiss lenses seem to have, vibrant and yet natural looking. It also has what many Zeiss Jena lenses have, an impressive close focus ability. So what are my conclusions about a lens that first came to market almost half a century ago? Well, let's remove those rose-tinted glasses for a moment and look at the weaknesses of this old optic. Although considered a great performer for its day, compared to modern glass, you might notice the optical flaws. One thing I'm not a fan of is the slight ninja stars in the highlights that this lens produces at f2.8. but this is not seen across the rest of the aperture range. At f2.4, the lens is a little soft, but sharpens up nicely by f4. Peak sharpness across the frame is unsurprisingly found at f8. Only in the corners do you see a slight improvement at f11. But at f11, diffraction is starting to set in and soften the center and midframe of the image. There is evidence of lateral chromatic aberration. The one surprise was the very little color fringing I could spot with close-up images. Of course, these are things that can easily be removed in the editing software of your choice. But that would be against the ethos of this channel, as I want to show you how the lens performs in its rawest form, a kind of start point for you, if you will. So the lens isn't perfect, and I would argue that no lens is, especially no vintage lens. If you're searching for optical perfection, look elsewhere. Vintage lenses are probably not for you. But where vintage lenses come into their own is that they can give your images and video a subtly different look, a certain feel to your work, a unique aesthetic. Unscientific, I know, but there you have it. Surely though, an image doesn't have to be optically perfect to move the viewer. After all, photography or cinematography is not simply only about recording a scene accurately, but recording a scene or image and conveying a feeling. So in the hands of a cinematographer, the lens is like a paintbrush. Some better suited than others to a particular subject or situation. That's why filmmakers like Greg Fraser, with budgets in the hundreds of millions, use rehoused vintage lenses like the Helios 44-2 and the Jupiter 9. Lenses with more optical flaws than the Flektogon I have here. So it depends on the aesthetic you're after, the feeling you're trying to convey. And just sometimes you can find beauty in imperfection. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and ring that bell. And then who knows, maybe we'll meet each other out there in the real world, snapping away happily with a fistful of lenses. Until next time, bye for now.